blah, 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 blah.
Welcome to the Our Forever Smiles podcast, a podcast created to support mothers of children who were born with clefts and those who love them. I'm your host, Laura Arroyo, and I'm also a mother of a daughter who was born with a surprise cleft palate. I know the challenges you face every day. Whether you have just learned the difficult news of your baby's cleft lip or palate, you're in the midst of pre-op or post-op, or you're an OG cleft mom, this podcast is for you. In a weekly conversation, we will talk about everything from feeding and speech therapy to surgery and school. We'll share tips from guest experts and advocates and even share a little joy in the process. You can listen to Our Forever Smiles wherever you listen to podcasts. Don't forget to subscribe and stay tuned. Hello, and welcome back to the Our Forever Smiles Cleft Mom Diaries and Support podcast. I am Laura Arroyo. Thank you to all of our subscribers, new and old. I appreciate all the support that we have received from this wonderful community. You can listen to us via Apple, Spotify, and everywhere podcasts are available. Don't forget to subscribe and stay tuned. As a note, we are not medical doctors, and we do not intend for you to use the information that we share here as medical advice. We are parents and advocates who love our children, and we are sharing our own personal experiences. I am thrilled to have a guest today because our guest has such a unique story, a unique journey, and I'm just really eager to dive into her story. Cecilia is a Canadian social worker, a psychotherapist, perinatal mental health certified, and mental health coach. She specializes in helping pregnant moms with the unique challenges that a cleft diagnosis brings during pregnancy and the postpartum period. She is a mother of 3 teenage boys and have gone through the cleft journey herself, being born with a bilateral cleft lip and palate, as well as a mom to her oldest son, who was also born with a bilateral cleft lip and palate, just like she was. And it was her personal cleft experience that inspired her to promote positive mental wellness in the cleft community. Welcome, Cecilia.
Thank you, Laura. So excited to be here.
Thank you. As you all have heard, Cecilia was born with a bilateral cleft lip and palate, and she also has an older son who was born with a bilateral cleft lip and palate. But first, I just want to say, three teenage boys, like, how have you kept them all alive?
I know. They're still alive. And it gets much easier when they're older and calm and not so energetic anymore. But yeah, it's amazing.
So first, I want to talk about your cleft journey. So what, I guess, is your cleft? Did you have a history of clefts in your family before you?
No. So I was the only one. No family history of a cleft lip and palate. So I was born in the late 70s, not to give away my age. And I'm the youngest of 3 girls. So we were 3 daughters. So no family history. So I came as a complete surprise, or the cleft came as a complete surprise. In your case with Giselle, my mom didn't know. My dad didn't know. So when I was born, obviously they went through that initial shock. And yeah, I remember my mom saying, like, the first couple of days it was so chaotic and hectic, and a lot of the nurses in the unit didn't know much about it. But I was born in Denmark, and in Denmark, the cleft treatment is like North America. It's centralized, so it's cleft teams. So once my mom and dad got connected to the cleft team, I remember my mom saying the surgeon came to see me because she was almost like hiding me a little bit because of people's reaction. Then when the surgeon came in and he took the blanket away and he looked at me and he said, she's exactly how she's supposed to be. And I think that from my mom was like feeling like, okay, this is going to be okay. Like him knowing and just validating and reassuring her she's exactly the way she should be. So yeah, so they didn't know. So the first couple of weeks, I guess, was a bit overwhelming. And I think from my mom grieving that she couldn't breastfeed, she had breastfed my other two siblings. So she was pumping, I think, for 3 months. So my cleft journey, I had 7 surgeries in total. So the first 3 surgeries was before the age of 2. So because I had a bilateral cleft lip and palate, and it was complete. So it wasn't incomplete. It was the full, like my dad would always say, you got the whole, like everything. So back then, the way they did the surgeries was when I was 3 months, they sewed together the one side, the left side, and then we waited another 3 months, and then it was the right side. And then before I turned 2, they did the palate.
Mm-hmm.
And so even with the NAM treatment and all of that, we don't do that in Denmark. Actually, it's more lip adhesion. So they would put like a temporary surgery, and then you would go back for revision later. So anyways, had the first 3 surgeries before the age of 2. I don't remember any of those. I don't know if that's reassuring to parents. It was for me with my own son, at least convincing myself he's not going to remember. But then but that's hard. But then the next surgery I had was I was 9 and I had the bone graft. And that's the first one I remember. So where they took some bone from my hip and put it in my palate. And they're obviously because the gums were impacted too. So got the bone graft at 9 years old. And then I think the year after, when I was around 10, I had a nose revision because my nose at that time was, so I had a nose revision at 10. And then when I was 19, I felt my upper lip was so thin and the scar tissue was so tight that I had asked the Cleft team about the possibilities of getting a lip revision. So I got that done when I was 19.
Hello, everyone. Sorry to interrupt, but I need a little bit of help. If you're listening to this on the Apple Podcast app or YouTube, you may see a follow plus sign or a subscribe button. If you're able to, it would mean the world to me if you could follow or subscribe. That's the best way to support this show. If you subscribe, I'm able to show it to potential guests or different brands. It helps to grow the show and reach more communities to continue building awareness about the cleft lip and palate journey on a global scale. Thank you so, so much. Back to the conversation.
And then at 21, I had the last surgery, which was a nose revision, just the tip of the nose, just to lift it a bit. And that was it.
Wow. So in Denmark, do they do NAM now, or
no?
They still don't do it? Okay,
no,
they just
not
do
to my
the
knowledge.
lip.
Yes. Yeah.
Oh wow. Okay.
I know. And
I wonder
Luca never had it either. Yeah, no. And I remember when we had Luca, my oldest son, I remember seeing pictures from the States and Canada because my husband's Canadian, I'm from Denmark. So we had him there. And I remember my husband's grandfather would send me pictures. Oh, I'm sure he's going to get this treatment. And I'm like, what is this NAM thing? Because we don't do that there. And so Luca had the same. He just had lip adhesion. But yeah, I can go into his journey after. But yeah, so we don't do that.
Yeah. So you talk about the first surgery that you actually remember, and that is the bone graft. And
Yes.
I guess, was it the pain that allowed you to remember that, or was it just like your parents' preparation going into that? Or what was the key thing that you remember from that?
It was the physical pain. It was the pain. I remember even them coming in when they had to sedate you, or they gave me some tranquilizer or something before we go down to the operating room. And I remember the nurses are trying to make it all uplifting and fun. Oh, we're just going to, this is where I remember they gave me the needle in my leg, in my thigh, and they made little dots and made it all fun. And we're going to poke you right here. And I just knew, I'm like, this is not going to be fun at all.
Yeah.
And then you kind of sense they get serious. They're like, okay, playtime's over. You got to get this needle. And so that I vividly remember. But then very quickly you become super sleepy, right? Like I got so tired. And then we went down to the operating room. And then, yeah, I went in for the surgery, got the mask. That's something I remember too, getting the mask and being sedated, trying to fight it because they make it sound like, oh, it smells like you can pick your flavor, strawberry, but it never smells pineapple.
Yeah.
But it never smells that great. All of a sudden you start smelling this anesthesia, and then yeah, you try to fight it, but then you have to surrender. And then I think the recovery after was hard. I realized in waking up and I couldn't actually walk for 2 or 3 days because they had taken, and I think that kind of surprised me. So when they were very fast to say, okay, you need to get up and start walking, I think I actually fainted. When I initially got up, I fainted in
Mm.
my mom's arms. So that, and then I was just so swollen in my face. It was a big surgery and couldn't
Yeah.
eat like solid food. So that was a tough surgery for sure.
Do you remember your mom and, during that time and
Mhm.
um I guess would you say that she was more stoic in those moments, or did you feel like she was crumbling as we all have and
Mhm.
the experiences that we share?
Mhm. She was very stoic. She was a
Mm.
nurse and she was such a strong advocate and supportive and allowing me to share my feelings and cry. And she was just, yeah, she was amazing. Yeah.
Yeah. How were your siblings handling all of this? Do you remember like sensing that I guess you were the special child that were getting
Mhm.
this a lot of extra attention, obviously,
Right.
because you needed it during that time? Or what was the sentiment in your household? I'm having you recall all these things from way back, but yeah, how was the sentiment in your home
I
between your
love
siblings?
I love that question, Laura, because it's funny when you ask me these things, it's stuff I've already, oh my God, yes, I remember. They would say my two older sisters, so one, Camilla, she's only a year older, and then Meta, she's 6 years, 7 years older. And they would say as we were old, oh, Cecilia, you got so much attention, you can't keep you. But I'm like, it was negative attention. I didn't want it. I didn't want this space. But I definitely think for my sister, my middle sister, Camilla, that was only a year older, we've talked about that when I came, obviously a lot of attention went to me. And my mom for sure feels some guilt about that because she had to go into the hospital with me. And then my sister was home with my dad. My older sister was out more, but so that I definitely think it took some away from them, but they have also been super supportive and strong advocates and speaking up for me if I was ever teased in school. I don't know what I would have done without them, especially the first few years where it was tough and I would just look at my sisters and they would be right there, which was nice having that
Yeah.
support. Yeah.
Yeah, you actually, I was just thinking that as well about school and just having whether you experienced any bullying or when was the first time that you felt like you were different or you had a few
Hmm.
extra appointments than your
Right.
peers.
Yeah, so that's such a good question, Laura, because I know I actually think I remember the exact moment. I think it was grade one when I started school. So up until then, like kindergarten, there was no issue. I never knew I was different. I never knew that there was anything different about me until I started school. And I clearly remember I was in the hallway and some kid from another class, it wasn't kids in my class, but it was kid from another class, made a comment or said a like some comment or what happened to your face or something. And it completely shocked me because I was
Mm.
like, what? And then I think I started realizing it's more societal. I always felt like there's nothing wrong with me. I'm fine. Started realizing at 6, 7, 8, society has a hard time accepting differences, and then that obviously impacts you, right?
Yeah.
So that I remember for sure. And then there was, yeah, definitely teasing on and off. It would be comments made, like people walking by saying comments or people looking at you differently or staring. And I
Mm.
remember the hardest part about that was I always felt like I can't help. This is not my fault. But you were being targeted or treated as if you did something or it was my, and I was like, that was probably the hardest thing to fathom. Like, why would you be so mean to somebody when they can't help it?
Yeah. Yeah, no, just in thinking about that, like having to have that feeling like really not even understanding because you're still a kid. So
Hmm.
you feel so out of control, I feel, in those moments. It's hmm. Ooh,
Yeah.
that doesn't make me feel good at all. So
But I
you've
would
been
say, but the gift of that, Laura, to turn that into a positive is actually, you know what? That's something I've thought about. Like, experience such adversity for me. I think that's why I got into this field of mental health and counseling and therapy because is there something I have developed out of all of this? Is this, I don't know, extreme empathy for other people, for diversity, uniqueness, differences. It doesn't matter. I'm a strong advocate for everybody's equal. And I think you develop this deep empathy for and compassion for people going through difficult things. And
yeah,
but
that's
yeah.
the plus
Hmm.
side of it for sure. I think when we had Steph, Heinz on the podcast as well, and she described it as the thing that I would share with other mothers that have children that were born with clefts is that this is really their superpower. And it sounds, oh, you're like, on the surface, it sounds like, oh, you're trying to like make fluff out of something that's really hard. But no, it actually is. It really builds, I feel like, a lot of character, and it allows you to view the world differently in a
100%.
new, in a different way, and from a different perspective when you have to go through something that's so challenging. And it is like your entire family going through this experience with you as well. And it does, in a sense, provides you with an advantage to just see things from different perspectives. And so I totally understand that. And there's so many cleft affected adults that I've spoken to as well that have told me the same thing. This is like probably having to face adversity is probably the best thing that has happened to me, because it's made me stronger. It's made me a bit better advocate. It's made me a better parent. It's made me show up in areas in my life that maybe I wouldn't have had I not gone through these experiences. It's go back. It's not the greatest way to develop those things, but it happens. And that's just where we're at with this.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And so you had so beyond the bone graft, you had nose revision and then lip revisions. Are those just surgeries that you opted to have?
Yes. I remember as a teen with my lip, and I remember when it was so tight, the scar tissue, that sometimes it would split a little bit. It was bothering me. So I went in for a cleft team meeting and I asked what are the options, and they said, oh, we can do this. We can do a lip revision, and same thing with the tip of my nose. So 2 years later. And so we are blessed in Denmark and so fortunate that cleft treatment is covered. It's paid for. So it's part of our healthcare system. And same in Canada, I think it's 75% covered. So we're lucky in that sense. You can go back and say, so it's public healthcare, but it's, I was blessed in that way.
Yeah. And that way you don't necessarily, I see so many people that like comment and that write to me as well about insurance companies denying coverage and just seeing what we can do. Also with the ELSA bill, I don't know if you heard of the ELSA bill in the United States. Yeah, that we are advocating for, so that more surgeries are covered for adults that are cleft affected, because it's you get to a point where you are 19, right, and you want a lip revision or you want something that can truly improve the quality of your life, and these insurance companies that you pay into don't want to cover. Yeah. So,
and it just adds that added stress, right? The financial stress of having to deal with that as well. I can't even imagine how challenging that is, to having to navigate that on top of everything else.
Yeah, no, it is. It's a big challenge. So, in thinking about building your own family, was a cleft something that you were concerned about, or what were your thoughts about it?
So I clearly remember my last cleft team meeting after the nose revision. I went up and we had a big meeting, and I remember saying to them, thank you for everything you've done. And I guess my cleft journey is done now, the medical side of things. We're done. And I've been with this team since I was born. As I'm walking out the door, I say to them, well, thank you for everything. I guess I won't see you unless I have my own baby with a cleft. And we all laughed. And I remember they're all like, oh, Cecilia, the chances are so small, like it's 1 to 3%. But there was always a side of me that had a gut feeling. I don't know why. There was something in me that had a feeling. I don't know. I just had this gut feeling I might have a child with a cleft lip and palate. So it was something that was always in the back of my mind. And I remember as a teen thinking, when I was all young and insecure, I wasn't even thinking really about having children. But I remember thinking I probably wouldn't want to have my kids go through that physical pain. But in my 20s, and then meeting my amazing husband, and then I met him when I was 22, I think 22, I think. Just knowing that it is a risk, but it didn't stop me. We knew in the back of our minds that it could be but I felt like if I don't have kids because of that, I'm denying a huge part of myself. And I love myself, and I love it's part of who I am. And so we got pregnant with Luca when I was 26 or 27. Can't remember. 26 or 27. 27 maybe.
Did you guess warn might not be the right word to use, but I guess what were the conversations like with your husband? Because being someone that experienced having a
Mm-hmm.
cleft yourself, and this isn't just like in a little walk in the park, right? Like,
Right.
there's a lot that goes into this
Yeah.
that can make things really hard. And
Mm-hmm.
yeah, did you have those types of conversations with him? And I guess
Mm-hmm.
what was he like, all in, or what were his
He
thoughts?
was all in. He was all in, and he was like, that baby's gonna be the cutest baby. He's like, you're so beautiful. I love you for who like he
Oh.
was. There was never any hesitation. He said, we'll deal with that. We'll overcome it. We're in it together. And I actually loved when we got pregnant with Luca and we had the 20-week scan, I saw it right away. I had this gut feeling. Anyways, we went back to Denmark and then we went to the proper, like a medical ultrasound, and it was confirmed. They're like, yeah, it looks like we think it's a, so Luca actually didn't have a complete bilateral cleft lip and palate. He had a complete cleft lip and palate on the right side and an incomplete in the left. So his left side was just a little bit up and then a gum notch on the left side. So the left side of his palate was actually, I remember when I was feeding him, I would make sure I would put the bottom more to the side because there was a bit of palate there. So it wasn't fully open. It was open on the right side. But do you know
Mm-hmm.
what I mean? There was a bit of palate on the
Yeah.
left side. I would definitely, when it was confirmed, I had a few weeks of totally grieving it and feeling so sad. And I just finished my own journey and now I have to embark on this other cleft journey and knowing the emotional, social, and then the physical pain that he had to go through. So I think I took a few weeks of grieving and feeling all the emotions. And then I actually think we told my husband's family, because at the time we were in Denmark, so we sent out an email. And I clearly remember my husband's grandfather, his name was Grandpa Charlie, he's deceased now. He wrote back the most uplifting email ever. And he actually just said, oh, he's going to be, I don't care if he has polka dots, he's going to be as precious and beautiful. Just get it fixed, polka dots. Just get it fixed and get on with it. And I know for a lot of cleft families that they would, because they don't feel it's just a fix, but that was exactly what I needed. It was this, I don't know, his optimistic approach that just made me feel like, you know what, I have a choice now. I can really grieve it and see it as the hardest journey we have to go through. Or I can change my mindset and say, you know what, I became determined to make his journeys as uplifting, as positive as possible. So any surgery we went into, it was like, we just made a trip out of it. We made it fun. We made it like really focusing on, and I even remember our first surgery after we had handed him over for surgery. We came back up and I saw all the other moms are crying. They had handed in their babies. And I'm like, should I be crying more? Like almost felt bad. I felt a big guilt. I'm like, I should really be grieving this. And this is so hard. And my husband looks at me. He's like, this is a week of our life. In a week, we're back home and we're moving. And I'm like, so I think we both had that sort of positive, you know what? We got this. It's fine. He's gonna be
Yeah.
fine.
I think that's really helpful though to have people around you that of course it depends on who you are as a person, right? The way that you grieve or the way that you deal with really hard situations. But I think just as you said, like, his grandpa is like, just get it fixed. And a lot of us are like, oh, this. I mean, like, our nails come out when we hear that. But I understand the sentiment is really just like, get it done. Exactly what to do. This baby's here and buckle down and let's get ready for the good fight. And so
Yeah.
I think I understand like where that feeling came from. And I think that was probably reassuring for you a bit because it's like, yeah, you're right. Like it is time to toughen up and face this head on. And we knew that this may have been a possibility. Obviously, they talk about this small chance and all these things go through your mind still, like the why me, and they said it was only supposed to be a small chance, and of course, so no, I completely understand that as well. I think just to go back to that, having that support system around you to be a cheerleader when you need them to, but also to just be able to allow you to mourn in the time that you need to and to feel your feelings a little bit, I think is really important. And so when he had that first revision, you shared that you were a little bit like, okay, we're ready. Did you have to do any prepping before then to get yourself ready for that moment? Or were you from that moment on, from telling people, you were starting to feel better?
And that's such a good point, Laura, because I think had he said that early on, I probably would have been very reactive. It's not just a fix. Don't be telling me I know the journey. No. But I think I had those 3 weeks, I think, to mourn, grieve, sit with it alone. Me and Anthony, my husband, our closest, my mom and dad, his mom and dad knew, and my sisters, but we hadn't told anyone because I needed the time to just process it. And once I was ready to share it with friends and family, then we shared it. And then after, so really it was just helpful. And I think it goes back to my upbringing and always having this sense of maybe not so much my immediate family, but family or society around me. There's this sense of, oh, poor her, or that's what a shame. Oh, she has to go through that, this heavy, sad. And kids pick up on that. And I think for me, there was always a part of me that refused to have that approach. I'm like, why are you guys telling me it's so hard when I'm the one who has to lie on that surgery table and go through all of that? So I think that sparked some like inner strength in me that I was like, I'm refusing to have that. It was almost like a pity. And I know people mean pity comes out of compassion for other people's suffering. But for me, it just felt disempowering. I felt like a victim and I didn't like that. Mm-hmm. And I think that's why for my son, I never wanted him to feel that oh, it's so sad. It's so hard for you. Oh, poor you. Because I knew that feeling so well. So I was like, you know what, sweetheart? Yes, it's going to hurt. It's going to be painful, and allowing him to feel it, not just to downplay it and be like, yeah, you're fine. I wasn't obviously like that, but definitely allowing him to process all these feelings when it's hard, but also focusing on, you know what, you did this and that's amazing. And look how strong you are and you overcame that. And this is your unique, you're so beautiful, and just trying to build his confidence in other ways. And yeah.
Yeah, I feel that so much because I had the same exact like feelings about it. Like I hated when I would hear people be like, you could hear it in their tone of voice. It would be like, oh, like it was and I'm just not, I come from a family of like strong women, and this is my little girl. And so I was just so, no. Then it's just like you say, people are just trying to show compassion, and they're trying they want to show empathy, and they understand that you're going through something really hard. And so we go through this whole thing that we're like, don't say it's an easy fix, but also don't say poor baby either.
Because we got this.
Yeah, don't say anything.
You when it's hard. Just ask me how I'm doing. I know, because sometimes people assume things, and it's really, I think, them projecting their own feelings of how it would be. And it is hard. There's no doubt. If we're totally honest, we all wish we didn't have to go through it. But when you're faced a challenge, we have to go through it, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's so interesting. So this came up in another episode that I recorded that we actually haven't released yet. But it was with Alicia Pelche, and she mentioned about how do you approach someone else that has a cleft lip? So I would love to get your opinion on this, because that's another one. And I know this is like a side like thing, but it's also one of those things that like, how do you expect other people to approach the subject of a cleft? And she had mentioned in the episode that her mother walked up to someone that had a cleft, and obviously her daughter, has a cleft. And so she walked up to her and she mentioned something about the cleft, and the woman was completely like caught off guard, and she did not like it. Like it was not a great experience. And so her sweet mom is trying to make this connection. Like, my daughter has a cleft. And we talked a little bit on the episode about like, how do you approach someone without offending, or I guess. So I guess my question to you is, if someone approached you about your cleft, would you get offended, or do you approach other people about their cleft? Or
that's such a good question. I do now all the time on Instagram. I was like, oh, hey, I have a bilateral too. Oh, what did you have? Okay. But I think growing up, no, you didn't. No, it was awkward as a teen. But when I saw somebody else, I noticed, I'm like, oh, they have it too. Because I think for me growing up, I felt like I was the only one in this world who had a cleft lip and palate, because it was rare I saw other people with it. So when I saw somebody, I'm like, oh, they have it too. Or when I was in the hospital, I'm like, oh, Actually, that's why I like going to the hospital, because once I was in there, I felt like completely everybody knew, nobody's questioning, nobody's looking, asking, oh, what's that? Oh, is that hard? Like they just knew. So that was
Yeah.
kind of comforting. As an adult, it's so rare that anybody would say, oh, were you born? Like people don't ask really, like now as an adult. But if they did, I would just explain what it is.
Yeah.
You know, as an
But
adult.
even if they had a cleft, would you you're so open about your journey and stuff
Right.
and like
You know, I
online
don't
you
think I
talk
would, Laura.
about it.
I don't think I would. If I met somebody who had a cleft, I wouldn't probably wouldn't walk up to them and be like, "Oh, you have a cleft too?" I guess it because again for me it's like, yeah, I do. And I don't know. I don't know. If it was somebody where I felt like a connection with them at, I don't know, in a coffee shop or
Yeah. Do you mention it
I
or do
don't
you
know.
act like it's not there?
That's a good question. I don't think I've actually ever experienced that. That's a good question. But I
Okay.
think I would definitely have done it with my little boy when he was little. And if I had seen other kids and at the hospitals, if you met other children, you'd be like, oh, you're born. Oh, what? And then we would talk about it in the hospital.
So, of course, my daughter is born with a cleft. If I saw you in a
Hmm.
coffee shop
Would
and
you
I
come up to
wanted,
me and be like,
that's what I'm saying. What would be the appropriate thing for me to say? Do
oh,
you
I would
know?
love that. I would
You
love it.
would
If I
love
met you
it?
in a, oh my God, I would love it. If you came up as a mom and you're like, my daughter has a cleft or a palate, cleft palate, I would be like, oh my God, her journey's good. She's going to be so fun. That I would love for sure.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's so hard because you don't know if the
I know.
person is going to be like mortified.
I don't be like, what? Why are you?
Like, yeah. So then the other thing too, like I reach out to people to come on the podcast, obviously, like to share their stories and stuff. And some people don't respond. And I respect that.
Right.
What it's very uncommon for people to not respond, but
Mhm.
I've had a few people just not respond. And I feel like not offended by it at all. Sometimes people
Mhm.
don't want to share their stories. Sometimes it can be very
Right.
traumatic. And
For
people have had,
sure.
I've spoken to people that have had like over 20 surgeries. Like it's
I
really
know.
tough. And so I'm just really, I really want to be respectful of that. And
Hmm.
yeah, some people just don't really want to talk about it. And
And would you say, Laura, is that adults or is it moms of cleft affected children or
it's
is it
more
both?
adults.
More adults.
Yeah, they don't want to share
Hmm.
their own experiences.
I
I
think
think,
there's a lot of, might be a lot of shame to it that it's really hard for people to talk about it, right? For some, it's, yeah, no, I can
yeah.
understand that. Maybe they don't feel like it's too hard.
Yeah, no, I'm sorry I went on that whole side tangent, but it just
No,
made
that's
me think
awesome.
of that, how there's a lot of like nuance in it and like how do you approach the subject and what do people that are not on the cleft journey say to people that
Hmm.
are on the cleft journey? Is it okay
Hmm.
for someone to say it's an easy fix, right? Well, we know no,
Right.
don't say that. Or can I come up to you and say, "Hey, you have a cleft. Can you talk to me
Yeah.
about that?" Or because some people don't want it to be highlighted at all. But yeah,
Mm.
interesting. So just back to Luca, it so you
Mm.
went in to have a 3D or 4D scan
Yes.
before you actually had your ultrasound?
Yes. So that's what we
Oh,
had in Canada. And then that's we and then I went back to Denmark because at the 3 month, no, I can't remember. The first scan they didn't couldn't see it. And then I guess the 20-week scan in Canada we could see, but then I went back home and then it was confirmed. And they
mm,
were like, yeah, he's going to be born with a, it looks like the palate isn't affected. I was hoping it wasn't just so he could maybe still breastfeed and
mhm,
because there's that whole thing of mourning the loss of not being able to breastfeed. But I think for me, knowing that he was, we had about the rest of the 20 from 25 weeks until he was born to prepare. And I know you've spoken about that, how you wish you
yeah.
had known maybe would just because it gives you the opportunity to prepare. But so I remember a nurse came to our house and she was talking about you can start pumping as soon as he's so I was very much I'm gonna be he's gonna have my breast milk for at least as long as I can. So I was pumping and pumping. Now looking back, I'm like, why did I put in all this? That was a lot. But I was determined, no, he needs my milk and only I can breastfeed him or not breastfeed him, but give him the bottle. And actually with my husband, we only allowed me and my husband. Because I remember the nurse saying something about think of it when you breastfeed it's only the mom breastfeeding. You don't give the baby away to 500 different people to feed the baby.
Mm,
So that actually, I liked that because I'm like, you know what? It felt like I could still breastfeed him, but that was just me and him feeding the bottle and then my husband. that was just how we did it. I think my mom did it sometimes too. I'm like, are you sure you're feeding him the right way?
Yeah, I was like that too.
What
That's
did
why
you?
I didn't send Giselle to daycare because of that, because I wanted
Okay.
to. So here in the United States, of course, we don't have long maternity leaves. So we are
Mm,
out like 12 weeks and then we go back to work. And
wow.
so a lot of times the babies go to daycare at 6 weeks. And yeah, and I had fully planned on doing that, of course, before I found out about her palate, but nope, she stayed home with me until, and I brought someone in to
Mm-hmm.
her so that I could monitor the feeding. That was the only thing
Right.
that I was like, I really wanted to have like eyes on someone feeding her. And then also,
Mm-hmm.
I really didn't have to fight anyone about feeding her because they were so scared. I feel like I put the fear of God into them.
You're like, what?
Yeah, I'm like watching every. They're like, you know what? You just do it. Just take her.
Yes, exactly.
But I wanted and I desperately needed the help. But oh
Of
my God.
course.
And those moments were like out of
Oh
our
my
minds.
God. 100% too much. But yeah, that we just become these tiger moms that we feel like we're the only ones who can do it.
Did he have both of his repairs at once? Or
Yeah, so so we were at the time living in Denmark. So he had 3 surgeries. Wait a minute. Yeah, 3 surgeries like me before the age of 2. So the first surgery when he was 3 months old, where they did a lip revision, where they just stitched it together superficially. And I remember when he came up from the surgery, I'm like, okay, what exactly did you guys do? Like, it looks like maybe I expected a more like it was done, but it was like temporary sort of a thing. But that
yeah,
apparently allows the skin to stretch. I guess it's
I've
kind of like
seen.
an AM situation. You know what I
I
mean?
don't know. Yeah, I've actually. I know what you're talking about. I think I know what you're talking about. I've seen the lip revision images, but it literally looks like just honestly like a bunch of adhesion, like adhesive or
Yes,
glue all over.
right.
Like
Yeah,
it's not what I expected when I think of like
right.
a lip adhesion.
Yeah.
So I know exactly what you mean. And I also didn't realize that was a surgery. I
Right.
actually had a plastic surgeon tell me that. They said that's
Yeah,
instead of using NAM, a lot of people use the lip adhesion.
right. And that's exactly what it was because it was a surgery. And then he came up and then he had the lip adhesion for about 3 months. And we could tell his gums started going in more and the lips were coming together. And then I think when he was 6 months, he had the full, like where they did it properly. And even with the nose a little bit. And I remember when he came up, I was blown away with the results. I'm like, oh my God. But I remember he had such big wide eyes and his face was all, when we talk about morning, like the smile, and then they look different. So this is the second time now he has changed.
Hmm.
But he was so adorable. He had this little cute nose and his lips were so like, I'm like, how do they do that? It's incredible. Like I was blown away. And then at 2 years old, he had the palate. Oh, sorry, wait a minute. The second surgery, did they do the soft palate? I think it was the soft palate. And then yes, and then at 2 years of age, they did the hard palate.
Yeah, I wanted to ask something that I just thought of. So I've seen some parents actually, maybe this sounds a little odd, but I've seen some adults who are cleft affected have a baby and realize that
Hmm.
their baby is not going to be cleft affected. And then more than that too. With
Oh,
your second and third boy, did you have that
no,
feeling at all?
no, I didn't mourn that at all. Because then I could breastfeed and it was just, and we didn't have to go through all of that because it's not only, right, it's like medical appointments, it's a lot.
Yeah.
It's a
Yeah.
lot. It's like a lot of appointments, and there's always in the back of your mind like the worrying, and that just felt like a breeze.
Yeah.
Like
Were
those
you
two other
shocked
ones.
that they weren't? Were you always?
No, no, I don't know. I felt like I would just have one. No, so the second boy, Noah, we had the ultrasound, and they definitely checked extra, and because they knew the history, and they confirmed right away, no, it's not there. We can't see it. We obviously can't fully see the palate, but it doesn't look like it. And we saw his face, and we could tell he didn't have it. And Matteo, my youngest boy, didn't have it either. And I kept
Yeah.
going until I had 3 because I always wanted 3. We
Yeah.
almost went for a fourth, Laura, but then we stopped. Once we slept through the night after Matteo, we're like, yeah, we're done.
Look, I have one, and once I started sleeping through the night, I said I'm done as
You're
well.
done. The sleep deprivation was so hard.
It is so hard, and I tell everyone, parents have a lot of questions about palate repair specifically,
Hmm.
and I tell everyone it's surgery, it's tough, but the biggest
Hmm.
thing is sleep. It's your child. You're just getting your child.
Yeah.
Like I had Giselle had palate repair at 10 months. She was
Hmm.
just starting to like fully sleep through the night where I could get like a full night's rest. And then she has surgery and it's like a
Yeah.
reset back to newborn. She's up all night and it's like you go back
Mm.
to being delusional and just
I know, so hard.
it's tough.
It
It's really
is.
tough. I feel like I've bounced so like all around. I've because I'm like thinking about so many
Awesome.
things like as we're talking
Yeah.
that they come
We
up.
both
But
knew this was going to happen, Laura. I knew this was going to happen. I had a feeling.
so are what do you feel like are the major differences between like your journey that you remember and Luca's journey?
I think was much easier. And
Yeah.
it's so interesting. I don't know. So he's had 5 surgeries where I had 7, and now he's 19. And I've asked him, I'm like, Luca, you can always get a revision done with your tip of your nose or the lip. Or he said, no, I look good the way I look. He's
Was
very like, his self-worth and confidence, it was to the point growing up that I was so afraid of projecting it onto him. But like, is
mm,
anybody ever teasing you or do you ever experience anything? He's like, oh, what are you talking about? I didn't want to put stuff in his mind that maybe there is something wrong because we honestly did not experience it. I think one time he had somebody made a comment that he shared with me, but he, I don't know, he hasn't experienced teasing or and I think throughout his elementary school years, and we just had really supportive teachers. And maybe because I was an advocate too, I was very much talking about it. If there's anything in school, or if you notice kids are teasing, please let us know so we can address it early on. But he's always had really good friends. He's always been really into sports, and he's very athletic and building confidence in that way. So he's so right now he's like, yeah, I'm not having any more. I look fine the way I'm not doing that. I'm like, okay, it's your choice.
yeah. So how often is the Cleft journey now that you all are both like
Hmm.
done-ish?
Right? Which
How
is kind of
often?
strange.
Yeah. Is it a part of your household chatter or
No,
yeah.
no, not anymore. And I think especially when they're growing up, that you're obviously like focused on it a lot. But come teenage years, and I guess the way he is as a person, he's very outgoing, very social, has so many friends, supportive friends. He's such an incredible, empathetic young man. And yeah, no. So he has the only thing he will eventually have to get done. He has where the gum notch was on the left side. He's missing a tooth. So Ryan has a fake tooth that was bridged on. And I think in 2 years that needs to come out and he needs to get an implant. The gap where he's missing that one tooth. So he's going to get that done. So an implant for sure. And who knows, now he's 19. Maybe when he's 20, for me, I was 21 where I felt, because I guess he's done growing. But I think they say with, especially boys, they're not done growing until maybe 20 or 21. So his jawline or the alignment and all that, maybe it will change. And maybe then he will want to have another surgery. But for now, it's just that one tooth he needs to get implanted at some point.
Yeah. Or maybe
Yeah.
even the way that he feels about it, right? Right now, he
Mm.
doesn't mind. Things change as you get older. You may feel like, oh,
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
want to make a change or do something different here.
Yeah.
Um,
Exactly.
so I would love to move into the Clef Mom question of the
Mm.
week. And so, as we've shared earlier, you're a psychotherapist, mental wellness coach. So, hopefully, I've read this question before and it is a very heavy question. So, hopefully, this resonates with our audience and also just that maybe we can provide some good advice or I guess a feeling of validation. I will share. While I am still grieving the quote unquote normal baby I thought I would have, I still have this sense of anxiety around the cleft diagnosis. I know for typical babies, a lot of first time parents have a different, hard the first year. But I can't help but feel like I won't be able to enjoy my baby until after all the first year surgeries are done. I can't help but feel like my baby's entire first year of life is going to be overshadowed by her cleft diagnosis, while other first time moms are going to be enjoying the newborn scrunch and cuddles. I'm going to be stressed out about doctors and surgery and insurance. I've always wanted to be a mom, but I just can't help but feel like I am constantly going to be in the world of cleft. I feel bad for feeling like I can't take her out into the world because I've seen some people react negatively to cleft and say rude comments. If anyone would like to share their experiences of the first year, I'd love to hear. It's just something I'm really struggling with.
Oh,
Cecilia.
yes, I would absolutely let her validate her feelings because they're so valid. And I think it's the first year is overshadowed by a cleft. Absolutely. I would say her baby is normal, 100% normal, even though it doesn't feel that way. And in terms of that feeling of not wanting to go out because you worry about how other people will react, I can 100% relate to that. And I remember feeling the same way with Luca. I actually didn't go out with him a lot when his cleft lip was open because I felt the need to protect myself because you as a new mom, you're so vulnerable, your hormones and all that. So I really allowed myself short and sweet walks, and until it's repaired, I felt a little bit more comfortable just because of society, right? And I think with anything, cleft or anything else, it's easy to say that we can change our mindset about it, but I think compare and despair is one thing I often when looking at other moms and thinking, oh, they have it, even though they have their struggles, mine will be much harder. That can be really hard to think that way because even though I understand how she's feeling, but they may be going through other things, postpartum depression, or maybe they're struggling too, even though they have this normal quote unquote baby, doesn't necessarily mean that their journey is easy. So I think, yeah, I can understand how it's really hard. And again, there's no right or wrong way to be grieving, or I think allowing you to feel these feelings and look after yourself. And it's okay not to want to be going out and having to deal with, you're already dealing with the difficulties of this, and then having to carry other people's hardship about all what we talked about before, right? So I think look after yourself and self-care and yeah.
Yeah, I really love that because that is something to consider, that motherhood in general is really hard. And although we experience this hard challenge with a child that was born with a difference, and so everybody's heart is different, right? There's other mothers that are going through postpartum depression, postpartum anxiety, postpartum psychosis, or they might not be seeing eye to eye with their partner. They may not be in a safe home. There's so many other things that we could pull out of the hat, an assortment of problems that anyone could have, right? So it's not like we're not trying to compete for whose trauma is the worst, right? And that's not something that is beneficial. But the one thing that I will say that I actually regret, and what I would encourage this mom to do, is to take as many pictures as you can. And I think I was so lost and caught up in that first year and just so worried about her care that I forgot to enjoy her. And that is the one thing, if I had any regrets, I don't really have any, but if I had to choose one, it would be that I didn't take enough pictures of those moments with her, and so that I could also reflect on the hard times and just having things that demonstrate her resilience and the really hard thing that we both went through together. And yeah, I was the same way. I was so worried that I forgot to capture those moments. And although now, right, like you don't see it, but just as we've shared in this conversation, right, Clef isn't even a part of your household talks anymore. It's not even something that you even really think of on a day to day. And I know that day seems so far away, but don't rush to it. But also the day where this journey is behind you is faster than you
absolutely
expect. Yeah.
No, that's beautiful. And I can totally, that's beautiful, Laura, because I think you're right. We get so caught up in the worries that we tend to forget to enjoy the moment. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. So just in closing, what do you think is the biggest lesson that you've learned along your journey?
I think, again, I think what we've talked about, that the way we see, I think it was, do you know Tony Robbins? His approach too, right? Because he had a very like tough upbringing and experienced a lot of adversity, and he made a conscious choice to choose a beautiful state, to be in a beautiful state. And I think he said once that we can, if we see life as happening for us, as opposed to life happening to us, then suffering will go away. And I think seeing this journey as something that happened for us, not to us, for me, maybe there was a reason, right? And I'm thinking of you too, Laura. I actually thought about that before I came on to the podcast. I'm like, you're a perfect example of taking something that was really hard and turning, I'm actually getting emotional now. I'm getting goosebumps. But Giselle's beautiful journey, you're that little gift, that little bundle of joy. And look at you now doing this podcast to the world and just spreading awareness and connecting people. And that's beautiful. And that wouldn't have happened if little Giselle didn't have her cleft palate.
Yeah.
So I think that's beautiful.
Thank you. I truly feel like I found my purpose. I felt like I had a purpose before, but yeah, she's definitely brought she turned my world upside down. And I only hope to be a resource and to help others, to reach other moms, to always say so that other moms will feel a little less alone. And you listen to the host of the show, but as I've shared time and time again, this is not about me. It's about the countless moms that are willing to come on and to share their stories and to be vulnerable in this space. And I'm forever, ever grateful for that. Yes. Thank you, Cecilia. There's a reason why you are Cleft Glow.
Exactly. We're all glowing in this Cleft Glow community. It was such a pleasure meeting you, Laura. Thank you so much for having me.
Yes, for sure. And thank you all for listening to the Our Forever Smiles, Cleft Mom Diaries, and Support podcast. Be sure to subscribe and submit a review of the podcast wherever you listen. I hope that you've enjoyed this audio experience. Maybe you cried a little, laughed a little, but more importantly, I hope that you feel a little piece of reassurance and even joy in your journey. Talk to you next week.